Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on You Need to Tell Your Story, Use a BioPara. This is part of the Boost Your Career webinars co-sponsored by Sue Mentors and Tulane University. Today, you'll be hearing from me, Sue Griffey, aka Sue Mentors. Let's start with this picture, actually a silhouette. I always ask people that I work with to describe themselves in 3 sentences. And the whole reason for doing, or a reason for doing this, besides learning about them, is because as you'll see in other Boost Your Career webinars, the whole focus is on taking control of your own professional development. So when I ask you to describe yourself, most people think they can do it. And then as soon as they start, I get what I call the laundry list of your history. And I'm not immune. I've done that myself as well. What does that look like? Well, here's a resume that doesn't have a story on it. And you'll see this is a person who has a master's degree in progress, and she's already had 6 jobs. You just have to count the blue boxes. And I don't have any clue from those 6 jobs what she's aiming at and where she thinks she's going. So let's take 2 quick high-level examples. These each have 4 jobs. Here's someone who I mentored who had these jobs. To me, when I first got it, I thought, oh, she's interested in education. I wonder if that's what her master's is in. This person clearly is pretty senior, or at least has a lot of scientist positions, and so she's moved up the ranks. So maybe she's looking for a leadership position. But actually, both of these were mentees that I worked with, and both of them had come to this pathway to do a master's in public health, and they were graduate students at the time. I think most people who are watching this webinar understand that each of us has a different career pathway. And because of that, it's really important that you make yours clear. So one of the things you'll hear me say often and on other webinars is you are the best person to tell your story. The reality is the silhouette that's not well defined. You might give some things, oh, he has a white shirt on, oh, can't tell what color the tie is, it's all black and white. What you want to do, and the goal, is to give people a whole snapshot of you. It doesn't have to be everything, but the BioPara is your first step at how do you give people an idea of what you've done in terms of what's important and where you're going. So I'm just going to briefly describe why you need a BioPara, and then we're going to talk about what it is and go through actual examples of how you construct it. Every opportunity is a two-way conversation in the way I work forward with people. We all know synchronous conversations. Those are what we consider a conversation. In-person dialogue, a dialogue on the phone, where people can talk and exchange information in real time. In the last few months, we've heard more and more about asynchronous conversations. And that's when you put information out there. It's not just electronically on the web, but also think about when you send an email or you leave a voicemail. You don't know when or even how it's received. So it's not in real time. And this becomes important when we'll talk in a while about why you do a BioPara and how you use them. So let's talk first about what a BioPara is. The weaving metaphor for me is very important because the BioPara briefly tells your story and doesn't make the reader work to construct your story from those bits and pieces that I showed you on the CV resume, your list of jobs, what your skills list is. It actually weaves together jobs, skills, and experiences that are important to telling your story, and also demonstrates why you're relevant for your next job or promotion or career pivot or whatever way you're moving forward. So you're going to be seeing me take you through this formula recipe that I've written for how I think it helps you construct a BioPara. This worksheet is available to you with the instructions and the examples at the bit.ly link, and you can stop now and copy that down and open if you want, or get it later. And the important thing is to understand is that there's no one right way, but there is a guide that should be able to help you, which we'll go through. So we'll start on the writing. We already saw the instructions. We're going to be weaving together. The first part of this is moving from the big vision to your accomplishments and then to tell the rest of the story. So you're going to aim for 4 to 6 sentences or partial sentences. Some people choose that method. And generally, I recommend no longer than a third of the page, a quarter to a third. So let's start moving through this. First sentence is your big vision, and you start with choosing your own title. This is not your most recent job, which used to be on LinkedIn, used to be the only thing they let you put as your, what they now call a headline. It's the big picture of who am I and what's been the area of expertise you've been working in so far. So here are some titles from people I've worked with in the last couple of years. And the first person and last person have about the same kind of experience, and they're actually both in public health school, getting masters in public health, but they've chosen 2 different titles. And that's why it's fun to choose your own, because you can choose something that defines what you're doing at this point in time. So here's some ways that people then filled out the rest of that first sentence. If you notice on the left towards the middle bottom, emerging public health professional with over a decade of experience in infant and child health in global settings. Pretty clear where she's come from, where she's going. Person at the top is someone who has a nursing degree and a master's degree, works in public health, and has worked in, we can see, in healthcare and emergency settings in Anglophone Africa. So they're all different, but they all tell you basically an introductory statement at the high level. The second sentence is a way for you then to describe your general areas of expertise and skills. Now, I took a picture of my closet because I thought it really illustrates the idea that we are very good at talking about a lot of stuff we do, but not at synthesizing it and describing it in a way the reader can absorb it. So in my closet, it may be organized, but it overwhelms me and I know what's in there. And that's just like this sentence from my BioPara from the old days on the left with the red X over it, where I put in everything I'd been doing for the last 20 years. And then slimmed it down in the last few years, slimmed it down to the box on the right, which I think is much clearer and really is my main area, excuse me, of expertise. Your third sentence focuses oftentimes on current work and a result of what you're doing, an accomplishment. But I'm here to tell you that the third sentences you're going to see in a minute are all different. And right now, in the time of COVID, but even before the pandemic, if you weren't working on a job that was directly in line with where you were aiming to go, this is the place that you pull up an important result or product or demonstrable achievement that you can show people how you've been able to do something. I work with people very much on showing the evidence of results that they've done rather than saying responsible for. You then have a way to prove and show people I'm not just a writer, I've actually written reports that come out each year, for example. So let's look at some of these sentences. The top left is a person who actually has appeared in other webinars. She's had other, I've used, I will stop right now and just say all the mentees that whose work I'm showing today have all agreed to share this. In fact, they're very generous and say if it helps other people, that's great. So the top left, she's been, other parts of her have been in webinars on experience, but she was a student who went from high school straight into college to do public health and then went straight into a master's in public health. And we wove a story of commitment to public health by things she did as a student, even though they weren't job experience related as she was trying to get an internship. On the right in the top is someone I worked with who's a real expert in biostats, but he was still just getting out of school, and we wove a story for him about his ability to take large and complex data sets and the kinds of statistical work that he was able to do with it. So you can see that the important things in each of these is you can count things, quantify things. Bottom left, $20 million of proposals. Bottom right, developing contraceptive education programs. There are things that you can hold on to that are the results of what you're doing, and not just I assisted in taking notes at meetings. The 4th to 6th sentences are those that I consider really germane to rounding you out and showing a complete picture. Many resume writers that I follow online and see in webinars say, oh, well, always include a few things on your hobbies and what you do outside of work or school. I don't have that same view of it. What I want to know is, what else have you done that makes you not unique, but makes you show me that you've been interested in your professional development, but also that you've done some unusual things that we can help then define you as appropriate. And these can include a variety of things. Everybody always wants to put in their skills, and they want to put in skills like technology and software and whatever bucket term we use for those nowadays. But don't give me something that says proficient in Outlook. Those are basic skills everybody should have. But if you can do web design that is also responsive to mobile and different kinds of operating systems, that's great. Honors and awards, an interesting internship, Peace Corps. Bottom left, I put in a section of my publications because many of us who do research or evaluation write, and this demonstrates what I have as unusualities. Languages definitely, and other things such as global work experience, certain kinds of certifications. For example, if you're interested in working in technology, you may get Microsoft certifications that allow you to work at a certain level. So as we'll see in a minute, there's no one way to write these, but the top left, you can see someone who was in graduate school and we knew what she was working on. And oh, by the way, she's going to Guatemala soon and going to work there for 2 years. Oh, that's interesting. Top right, another graduate student. If you looked at what she had been doing before, she had some interesting things, but now I see that she worked with women and minorities in minority communities on mental and sexual health care, and also worked in Turkey, and also reads and speaks intermediate Spanish and Arabic. And suddenly you see that each person is shaping a picture that the reader, like me, is reading saying, oh, I see that the person on the top right is very different from the top left, even though they're both in a Masters of Public Health program. So let's talk about how this is going to help you. I'm just going to give you an overview of something I've said for many years. Write once, use often, disseminate everywhere. And it's even more important now with electronic visibility and the fact that we often meet people first electronically in some way as opposed to in person. You need to always be aware of consistency. So what you write on your resume should be the same as on LinkedIn. What you do to introduce yourself if you're in a job interview should be similar to the kinds of weaving in your story for your BioPara. It becomes important to use it, and you'll see examples of these in other webinars on cover letter and resumes, on I do have experience, and on why do I need a CV and a resume, and I'll talk about these at the end. So we're back to conversations. This is the synchronous conversation. You can readily respond when someone says, tell me about you. If you're at top left, a networking event, you're probably only going to just use the first sentence. It's a brief exchange, and in the old days, an exchange of cards, which this woman's handing out. Bottom left, more detailed introduction. Someone came and was a speaker at a workshop that I was at, and I took this picture to show you that you use sentences 1 to 3. So it gives people enough background so they understand, like, why did they bring this? Why did they bring Sue in to be a speaker? The middle top is actually a stock picture from another webinar on effective networking. But you also use all or part of the first sentence when you run into someone in the elevator. Hopefully someday we'll get back to those. At a coffee shop, maybe your friend introduces you to someone and the two of you realize you have a professional connection. And more nowadays, because of the virtual world that we were instantly burgeoned and exploded actually with the pandemic and work from home, you will use various sentences to be able to pull out your key achievements without having to think about it and say, oh yeah, what did I do? Your mind's racing. This engages the listener because you've got their attention and you've told them something in a way they can absorb it. In the asynchronous world, now we're back to using your BioPara to make sure people meet you effectively. The first thing they're going to see when you apply for a job is either a description of you in a box that you cut and paste something into, and or on your resume. So on the left-hand side, the top is someone's resume, and you can see the red box around their BioPara. You put the same thing on LinkedIn that's on your CV. And I featured Lizanne here. Dr. Lizanne Brown actually did a case study webinar with us on leading with leadership. The top right is a networking outreach sample text that I wrote for the webinar on effective networking. And you'll notice in the small red box there that I always recommend you just paste your BioPara in the email below, because then you don't have to say to someone, I did this, I did this, I did this, and that's why I want to talk to you. You focus on the ask, make it an easy ask, but you give them your whole little story, not your little story, your story below your signature line. And then they don't have to go look you up on LinkedIn or even open up your resume if you attach it. And you use parts of your BioPara for a cover letter to emphasize who you are at the high level before you start tailoring your cover letter to emphasize what you bring to the specific job that you're applying for. A few caveats I want to go over, and this is in a couple other webinars, especially the no reply webinar, and you do have experience. One of the things that I find over and over again that has become almost the standard recommendations from resume writers online is to just list everything and throw in all these words. And I'm here to tell you these 3 categories, you need to reframe what you're doing. Don't give people a long skills list. Check out our webinar on showing and rating your skills, because from this list, I can't tell, except for the native bilingual Spanish, whether they really know Stata as well as they know R, which is software, and R is much more complex than Stata is. Do they really know modeling software very well? How well did they know it? A long list isn't going to help anybody. You want to mention what you can work in, but you need to say whether you're a basic or initial user. You can use intermediate, advanced. And what I've given you in the webinar is some sources for how you decide whether you're intermediate or advanced in certain software, especially. The bottom left, empty buzzwords. Almost everybody that I work with who comes to me and has written a resume with either a resume writer or especially people who are more senior who haven't updated their resumes or CVs in a while, they have all this stuff like resourceful, dynamic, experienced, and every one of us says that. No one says I'm a lazy worker. We say, yes, I can work in a fast-paced environment. But I'm sure you can think of some people you've seen or work with in school or in your jobs who aren't as fast workers as you are, or maybe other people who are much faster than you are. We can't all use the same words and convey what we bring. So take those out of what your language is and instead use examples. And finally, on the right, this is a phrase that I coined a few years ago, and I call them self-value judgment words. These are the adjectives: good, excellent, strong, even experienced. You at times can use the word strong writer or excellent writer, but you cannot use it without giving a phrase like excellent writer of annual reports. But I'd rather have you say, communication skills include oral presentations at conferences 2 to 3 times a year and produce 2 technical reports and a monthly newsletter each year. So now you've quantified. I know what you've done. I see that you've done different products. I see that you present in front of people, i.e. conferences. And I get much more of a sense of what can you really do for me when I'm hiring you, or I need a consultant. I'm hiring you because you can help me solve a problem, fill a gap. All right, let's look at a BioPara I got a couple years ago. This is a friend, a colleague friend, we've worked together, who said to me, I want more e-visibility. And she had the top left in her CV. And I said to her, this doesn't tell you your story. A strong focus on programming for maternal, newborn, and child health. Well, you can see by what I circled below, we expanded her BioPara, and hers is actually partly from spacing, much longer than a third of a page. But we actually could quantify it. She specified the organization she worked for, the donor that funded it, the amount of it, and what the program was, maternal and neonatal health program, and that it worked in 20 countries around the globe. Much, much more impact for the same numbers of lines, 3 lines there. In the first paragraph at the very, towards the very end, you can also see that we now know what she's doing at present. She's doing the VP job, and she's directing a project, $9 million feature project across 24 countries. Suddenly you get the idea that this is a person, and she came to me because of e-visibility and wanting to move out of a specific technical area into a larger leadership role. But now you see, oh, this person really can do the work. So senior people don't always get it right either. That's part of why I like to show this BioPara, but also because it just takes a little more effort to tell a summary story that's compelling with numbers and specific accomplishments in an evidence-based way that the reader can absorb and learn about you and understand what you would bring them for a job, a consultancy, collaboration. We're going to leave you now with examples from Mentees. Here are, there's this page and the next. So this is people that are either in graduate school or just finishing graduate school, before and after work I did with them as mentees. And I left in the track changes because one of the things that I find most people need help with is helping find the right words and phrasing for things. So a lot of the ideas are there on the left and on the right in the paragraph above, but you'll see that I've highlighted in red if it's too vague, a buzzword in yellow, and self-value judgments. These both had some work with their career services before I started working with them. But both Sarah and I find that because we do this quite a bit, we're able to give people the push to help them rephrase things. Taking other people's examples will give you the ideas of how you can reframe your language. And so now you see in both of these, the gray results on the bottom, we now see that the person on the left, she's got 4 different things to point to. The person on the right has 2 big things, big studies. And this suddenly gives her much more ability to say, this is why I'm aiming to go towards here. These two are more senior. The one on the right, on the left is a mid-career professional, and on the right, someone who has quite a bit of experience. And with both of them, again, the before and after show that we really focused on results and not on using buzzwords. So as we wind up, here we are. We finally are beginning to get a whole snapshot of you. You, even just listening to this webinar, are already thinking about the things that you could start weaving into your story. You're already taking control of your professional development by being here, and you're the best one to do it. You know yourself and you own yourself. So put your story out there, weave together a nice complete weaving for where you are right now, showing why it is substantiating where you're going in your professional career pathway. And then you've taken control of your narrative in person and in the e-visibility world that we live in now. So here you are, all your glory. We can see you clearly. We've got a nice snapshot of who you are, and you've been effectively engaging to do the work and proactively provide value as you demonstrate to people where you're going and how you can work with them to get along your career path. As always, thanks very much for attending. We have a lot more webinars than these. These are the ones specifically on Boost Your Career, and you can stop now and write down the bit.ly link or look up the Tulane Alumni Career Services webinars. You're welcome, even if you're not Tulane alum, to join the channel and benefit from the other webinars that Tulane makes available as well. So don't forget to check those out. And please let Sarah or Sue know if you need more information on a topic, or especially if you have ideas about another webinar you'd like. Thanks again for attending.